in the last 24 hours or so. In studio, I'm joined by Honorable William Kisang, who is the Elgeyo Marakwet Senator, and equally joined by Alex Manyasi, who's a governance expert. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. And shortly, we will be expecting Akelo Misori, who is the KUPPET Secretary General. So as we continue with our deliberations, let's focus on what's been covered on the front page of the Daily Nation just briefly, all to do with the cost of power and how members of parliament in a House committee just yesterday threw out the Kenya Power bosses, accusing them of lacking tangible measures to reduce electricity costs, which the lawmakers blamed on exorbitant deals with the independent power producers, that's the IPPs, run by cartels, shielded by utility firm. This even as the cabinet this week lifted the Uhuru era ban on new IPPs. So a lot to do with the cost of living in the country, and allow me to go to page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation so we can just show our viewers an excerpt of what to expect on that particular story that has covered the energy mix, where Cabinet recently lifted the ban on signing new power purchase agreements to cover hydropower. And lawmakers say the IPPs are the cause of high electricity costs and are against onboarding new ones. So one side, the legislative arm of government, the other side, the Cabinet executive, giving a go-ahead on this power purchase agreements. A lot to do with the cost of living and the cost of production as well, even as we're trying to push manufacturing industry in the country to pick up. This is definitely a hindrance if you look at it that way, the high electricity costs in the country. So, gentlemen, I'll start with you, Manyasi, and briefly, what do you make of the move by the cabinet and thereafter members of parliament putting their foot down when it comes to, you know, the IPPs? It says the MPs and government are on a collision course. What say you?
Yeah, so one of the things that in this country used to raise the cost of power a lot is the cost of independent power producers, the generators. But allow me, before I go into that, yesterday I bought 2,000 shillings worth of power. And this is the breakdown. And in my head, I was asking myself, so how is the common person surviving? It's a bit difficult to even understand. The unit is 101.52. The amount is 2,000 shillings. The token amount, what I got for paying 2,000 shillings, was worth 782.75. Now, VAT was 232 shillings. Fuel energy charge was 669.02. Forex exchange 187. EPRA charge 3 shillings. WRA charge 0.85. REP charge 39.08. Inflation adjustment 86.29. So the cost of power, in my view, is 60 to 70% controlled by things that have nothing to do with what you're getting or what you're purchasing. And that's where the issue is. So even as we talk about the issue of drought, this country has gone through a drought situation for a while now. And therefore, what Parliament and the people concerned should be looking at most is thinking about why am I getting 700 shillings worth of 2,000 bob? I think that's where we need to start from.
An interesting breakdown right there. And according to the Daily Nation, the cabinet this week lifted a ban on the signing of new power purchase agreements with independent power producers. It said this was to cover shortfalls from hydropower due to the ongoing and future drought. At the same time, lawmakers criticized Kenya Power of the high cost of power, which they attributed to exorbitant contracts with IPPs. And we have a member of parliament who sponsored a motion to stop new PPAs until an audit is done by the National Assembly Energy Committee. Mahesh, what's your take on this? Because we've seen members of parliament quite vocal on this, and I'm pretty sure the cost of living is a talk. Even when you interact with residents of Elgeyo Marakwet, this is something that comes up.
Thank you very much. from what Alex has given us, when you purchase power, you get value of 35%. This is basically, I've just calculated. So 65% are taxes. These are taxes before even we talk about the IPPs. What goes to the government in terms of tax, IBRA, VAT is over 60%. That is where we need to begin. We have a problem. There are so many levies, there are so many taxes that are levied on power that we need to look at. Secondly, there are many agreements. The power purchase agreements from independent power producers that have been going on for a long time. Even when we already have enough renewable, clean energy that has been generated, that we've invested, that we've allocated resources. I was lucky 2013 to 2017, I was in the Energy Committee of the National Assembly, and I know what Geodamo did, what Kenchan has done, what Ketraco has done, and we should not actually still be using thermal power. This thermal power is very expensive. KenGen generates or sells 70% power to Kenya Power. The IPPs sell 30% power to Kenya Power. But when it comes to the payment, KenGen gets 44% payments. IPPs, they get 56%. You generate, you sell 30%, you get 56% of the payments. Then KenGen, which is owned by government, sells 70% and you get 44%. So this is where we are saying, as Energy Committee of Senate, I'm the Vice Chair of the Energy Committee in Senate. I was elected this week on Tuesday, and already we are doing terms of reference. In the next few weeks, we are doing an inquiry about the cost of power in the country. We will also need to peruse all these power purchase agreements, the conditions. There are people who have committed the country into very expensive agreements that you cannot exit, or if you exit from these agreements, you pay a lot of money. Look at the Turkana power, the clean, the solar, the wind power. I mean, we spent a lot of money, we took loans, and it took a lot of time before it is connected to the national grid. And we are paying the loan. So there is a lot of atrocities that have been done against Kenyans by some civil servants, and we have said people are going to be prosecuted. We'll take people to court. We know this is a sector where there are very many cartels. This is a cash cow for many people. The cost of food, the reason why it's expensive, it is because of the cost of power. Other countries like Ethiopia, it is cheaper to import power from Ethiopia to Kenya. So this is a very serious conversation because our people are suffering. Subsidies are coming to an end because there was a conversation, in the past, even in the last regime, the agreements that were signed was that by 2023, these subsidies were coming to an end. And since they are coming to an end, life is becoming unbearable for our people. So that's why we've said, as legislators, we are the representatives of the people. And we want to protect the people and ensure these agreements are reviewed, others are terminated, and even as the CS has opened for new agreements, we want, as Parliament, both National Assembly and Senate, before agreements are signed, we peruse because we're the representatives of the people.
Simple as that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oversight. Akelo Misori, karibu sana. It's a pleasure to have you with us right here on Morning Prime. You've joined us while we were talking about the cost of electricity. I don't know if you're equally feeling the pinch
more frustrated consumer of electricity in Kenya.
And you know what? If the energy or electricity prices are set to go up, it'll be further, you'll have to dig deeper into your pockets.
There are also other things which are very, very interesting in the power distribution, for example, that you can apply to get power, and it take a whole year before you are they come to connect you.
Yes.
Yet this is an essential service which somebody like me need to be given even before I complete building my house. It is very interesting in Kenya, and I think as the Mheshimiwa has said, I think something needs to be done. A thorough conversation among Kenyans and among parliamentarians need to protect Kenyans from extortion and exploitation.
Okay.
In fact, what I wanted to add is we are saying, how can Kenya Power make losses when it's a monopoly?
It's
When you're a monopoly, you cannot make losses because you are pricing your products with a margin. You can't make losses.
And perhaps
then also we are saying maybe this time that we also liberalize this sector, we allow other small people to distribute. Like Mumias, when it used to operate, used to generate power. Instead of selling to the national grid, we give them a license to sell power to the communities within there.
Yeah.
If you go to Meru, Kinoro area, the tea factories, the tea factories across the country, most of them generate their own power. We also allow them to sell to the neighbors at affordable price so that Kenya Power gets a competitor.
And I want your reaction on that proposal, if it goes through, which will see electricity prices rise by, is it up to 78% if KPLC actually get what they're looking for from EPRA? They're seeking to withdraw the monthly subsidy that cushions poor households. As members of the Energy Committee, perhaps your reaction to that, because once April reaches and they get that particular nod, it's more concern for Kenyans,
In the course of next week, we are going out and we are going to invite, as the Energy Committee of Senate, we are inviting the industry. And these are some of the things that we are saying we need to delay as we get a solution for the government to maybe reduce some of the taxes so that if subsidy is stopped, then taxes are supposed to be waived to compensate.
So it's definitely a tricky balance. And Akello, let's talk about education matters since you're here, and we'll definitely get the input of the other guests. And perhaps taking taking a look at the back page of the Daily Nation. It has gone big with the latest statistics from grade 7 and Form 1 in terms of those who have reported and those who haven't. 160,000 yet to report to Form 1 and grade 7. And the Education CS has asked sub-county and county officers to mop up the learners. And there we have the rate of transition from Class 8 to Form 1 is at 91%. The transition rate to grade 7 stands at 97%. And kindly speak to the challenges that we've seen actually made headlines over the course of the week due to the junior secondary school transition. Number one, not everyone has reported. Number two, the challenges when it comes to infrastructure, and equally, books being delivered later. Some schools saying we haven't received books up until now. When it comes to hiring of teachers, give us a general perspective of the state of affairs, even as we continue with the implementation of CBC.
First, let me just say that the government option to domicile CBC in primary school was ill thought of. And in fact, by the time the government reached that position, we ought to have had a proper synergy between the Ministry of Education and Teacher Service Commission. First, on the ground, you have teachers, and then the learners come to get the teachers in school. The 30% the 35,000 teachers who are conscripted to come and salvage the transition were a drop in the ocean. Because already the Teacher Service Commission were aware that before this transition took place, there was a deficit of 116,000. That is the record they have. From our side, we thought it was a much higher. Because when you are talking about transition, we expected the learners to get into schools where there was sufficient infrastructure, where there are adequate teachers, where the resources like the books we're talking about were already in school. Yeah. But granted that maybe this is a transition, we expect teething problems. Mm-hmm. One thing which we needed to have both was to commit ourselves to look at the viability of domiciling this class in primary schools. Because for one, we already had sub-county schools. In fact, currently, nearly every primary school has a secondary school, a sister secondary school. So there would be no need for a secondary school curriculum to be implemented in primary when there was already an existing secondary school there. It could have been very easy to address the issue of staffing when at least there are people who are already handling the learners. So the fear that you see that there is transition problem, yet it is supposed to be 100% transition. Yeah. Some parents are still waiting on the fence to wait and see whether they can be allowed to have their learners go to 8, because they still think that these learners were supposed to have gone to secondary school. So that was the softer option the government took. It was a disaster. Yet then the second issue is the manner in which the Presidential Working Party have handled themselves. You remember that even the president has disowned them twice. Yes. That means that the people who are granted the opportunity as experts went for opinion poll. That how many people want this one to be in primary? How many want them to be in secondary school? That is what informed what took place. And I think when we are thinking about how to fix this, then the government must open up and be very flexible. First, we must add the number of teachers. We can not think about these resources because teachers have already been working with very meager resources in the past. Myself, I did go through primary class 1 up to 4 under 3. And I'm here with you today. But because there was a teacher, this is a very critical person in learning. So the teacher who is supposed to be there. This is a very complex curriculum, and it is the way for us to go. It requires very close supervision, and you cannot have a public rally in a class and with only one teacher, and you have 14 learning areas. So those are the challenges that we are experiencing currently. And another thing which is there is that the field officers also have failed us because they seem not to have planned. When the president made a pronouncement that we are now going to domicile, every field officer from the Ministry to Teacher Service Commission needed to have notes left to rationalize staffing, to think about how it works, awaiting the books. The former cabinet minister, the cabinet secretary, who pushed us through up to grade 6, had already taken 2 years to build 10,000 classrooms. 2 years. And he said those ones were cheap. How much time do you think it will take to build 25,000 laboratories in our primary schools? We have got sub-county schools. In fact, some people were thinking about just boarding schools. Boarding schools in Kenya accommodate only 27% of learners. Most of these children come from the village. Our thinking that we must go to alliance is what is bringing us down. We must go to Mangu, we must go to Ngadu Girls. These are the things which are dealing a blow to this noble idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the state of affairs. We are not doing so well, but I think it is just 1 month. If the Ministry of Education sets its foot on the ground and the Teacher Service Commission also work around the clock, we can fix the teacher issue. And then the books are things which you can take today and you supply the old school. Because we have all the elections in this country, which is a very labor intensive. They take the ballot to every polling station. What will happen if the books are available? They can be taken the same day, the same one weekend, and the books will be there in school. So that is the issue.
So the core issue from where you sit is the teacher.
It's the teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
Capacity building.
Yeah.
And perhaps has the capitation fee been disbursed, especially for junior secondary?
Let me also hasten to say, when you have made a contract with government, a government is not it's not a KELO. A government is a very serious organ. If the government has said they are going to give capitation of 15,000, you cannot doubt it. Therefore, somebody can easily make business with government, and that one is there. So what you people are reporting, I think, is also making us feel very jittery. That you are going to the fact that money has not been there, yet we know very well that what will this money do? The money will buy textbooks, the money will buy other resources. If there is serious commitment, like the agreements that Mheshimiwa is talking about here, then anybody can do business. We have had people who have had business with the counties, and for 4 years they have not been paid. But this is a government which is committed, and education is an essential activity. They will pay. So the fear of not disbursing is an excuse which I don't buy.
Okay.
Yes.
Well noted. And equally, there's a story as you come in, the Standard, and it should be on your screen in just but a few, because I wanted your reaction. You've mentioned about the laboratories and building of infrastructure. The CS Machogu mentioned that the state is set to build 8,000 laboratories in junior secondary schools, which will roughly cost the government 10 billion and cover at least 40% of what is required. A step in the right direction. What needs to be done to make sure that it's facilitated and enhanced so we don't compromise on the quality of education in the country?
Now, if this one happens between now and next year, that one would be okay. You know, what people are anxious about is whether grade 7 is a laboratory intensive kind of curriculum. It is very basic, and it requires SEPU to supply schools with just science tools, science kits. This one would still make available. The building, let those 10,000 laboratories be available by next year. They would be more useful in grade 8 and 9.
Going ahead.
For grade 7, those things can still work without intensive laboratory presence.
All right.
Good. This is an issue that has been there for a while. I know this is the second time we're changing our system, because I was in the old system, the class 7, CB, I believe we did CB.
Yeah.
And then 844 came in. And the problem that happened along the way was to change. 844 was a good system when it started. And then along the way, there were some changes. Now we are at CBC. Up to early this year, everybody knew that junior secondary school was going to be domiciled in our sub-county, especially sub-county secondary schools. And because of the task force and because of noise also from parents and from some of us, I want to admit that some of us also, especially those from rural areas, you know, there are some rural schools, rural primary schools, that the distance between a primary school and a secondary school is over 10 kilometers. Yes. And parents say, a child who is 11, 12 years, how is he going to commute from the primary school buy food, and come back in the evening without escort. You know, they were going to be exposed. I think that is the reason why Missouri is saying there was an opinion poll, and then they said we domicile in a primary school. Maybe what we should have done is to do like a mix. Those schools, we should have done a mix. Those schools in rural areas where they are very far from the neighboring secondary school, we should have started a junior secondary school there, within that primary school. While a school within a town, like Iten, you know, like Iten, we have about four, 5 primary schools, and we have 3 secondary schools around there. They would have joined those secondary schools because already the ministry had built a class in each of the secondary schools. The only problem that ministry also had was a class out of 3 primary schools. You would have like 600 students. They would not fit a class. That is why the president had requested members of National Assembly to support with CDF to build additional classes. So that should have been the issue. But be it as it may now, that they are all domiciled in the primary school. All our primary school have the classes because class 7 is there.
Yeah.
Class 8 are exiting this year. So when grade 7 go to grade 8 next year, they still have a classroom. For grade 8, that would have been a class 8 class. It is the grade 9 now that requires to build an additional class for that grade, or more than, depending on the number of students by grade 9. So the issue that we have, as Missouri said, is where are the teachers in primary school to teach the junior secondary school? That is the elephant in the house.
Okay.
You know, that is the elephant in the house. Because if they had gone to our secondary schools, the teachers were already there. And the shortage was only 116,000. Now we have a serious shortage of minimum of, say, 7 teachers in every primary school. Out of 21,000 primary schools, or 22,000, times 7 teachers. That is 140,000 teachers. And TSC have only employed now 30 on intern. So basically, the ministry and TSC and you guys in the union, you need to reorganize and also move those teachers in primary school who have gone for degree courses and redeploy them and redesignate them in the junior secondary school, and also review that CBA. The CBA that was signed, it looks like our teachers also have a problem with it. Because to move from one grade to another one, it's like they have issues because, you know, they have told us outside there. So, because also very soon, the primary schools will be overstaffed. Because when they stop at grade 6,
what happens to
those who are supposed to be teaching? They were given because of class 7 and class 8.
So the question that Mheshimiwa is asking is where I wanted to start from. And for me, I was telling you when we began that I am one of the people that was on record having said that I did not believe that the government was prepared, even leave alone this government, the government then, to implement CBC. And some people dismissed me, especially those who are in government. But I think, first of all, since 2014 or 2016, when the government, when TSC stopped promoting teachers based on degrees, there are so many teachers in primary schools today who have degrees. Now, there are 2 things to it. There are teachers who have degrees that have 2 teaching subjects, and there are those who have degrees that are either ECD or others, or primary option, and those kind of things. The sad part is that the government is insisting that for you to teach junior secondary, you have to have a degree and 2 teaching subjects. But as we sit here, the same teachers that are being told don't qualify to teach are the ones teaching. So what is this magic that we want to play with that teaching that is not being played today. Because TSC posted interns, some schools got 1, those who are lucky got 2. So that means some got 1 to teach 2 classrooms, 2 to teach 3 streams or 4. Yeah. Some lucky ones got 2 interns who have never been in a classroom before, trying to figure out. Secondly, the timetables are different. Those young ones are 35 minutes. The so-called seniors, some of them are 10-year-olds. Yeah, I don't know how senior they are. 40 minutes. So you have a scenario where a teacher is supposed to be shuttling between classrooms without knowing. So do I cut 5 minutes or do I increase 5 minutes on this side? That has not been resolved. Learners in junior secondary school took the first 1 month without learning. My problem is that I think this is a sensitive matter which unfortunately catches up with us only 20 years down the line. And it's unfortunate that the aspect of the child is not being taken care of seriously. Let the government think seriously about promoting the teachers in primary schools that have degrees.
Yes.
They are available. You're not going to look for them elsewhere.
They're on payroll.
And they're on payroll already. You don't have to incur expenses. And just like Mheshimiwa asked, if you don't promote them, and then you bring other teachers, and then you transition them to teach only grade 6 and below, you'll have an excess of teachers. So do we have a problem that we want to make worse? Or we have a problem that we can deal with using the resources that we have? In my view, it's more of, I don't think it's 100% a teacher issue. It's more of inability to manage the situation based on what you have. And I believe the reason why, for example, this was domiciled in primary schools was exactly what we are saying. There were already buildings, so you didn't have to think about the other constraints of having to go through whatever it is. Most of the primary schools anyway, the kids have not even changed uniform, they are playing together. Some of them are senior than the ones that we are calling senior. So it's a necessary confusion that we can deal with by taking care, using the teachers that we have to actually fix it until we are ready for it.
And as you come in, Akelo, let's not just focus on JSS, talk about public universities, because a lot has been said over the week. I think just recently we had from Ruto, I think through CS Machogu, actually mentioned that, the government has never contemplated or planned to privatize public universities. Or this issue about increasing the fee, he sort of distanced themselves from that particular conversation, And this has been a cause of concern, bearing in mind the cash crunch that public universities are facing. We well know of what the Vice Chancellor has perhaps proposed. From where you sit, how should he approach this particular conundrum that is facing public universities when it comes to the cash crunch crisis, and perhaps, changing some of these courses to the 21st century demands? Egerton University just this week, I think, dropped 8 courses, apart from laying off some of their staff. But what do you make of the public universities issue?
I would have wished to pursue what our colleagues had already alluded to in terms of the teacher issue and the nature of our schools.
Sure.
We are not talking about numbers.
Yes.
Because, yes, we have teachers who have gone to university and now upgraded themselves. But we are talking about a curriculum and the implementation and the quality of staff. So you have gone to university and you even have masters. In fact, what will shock you is that even today, some of our primary schools have PhD holders. That is something which is there. But now they are not in relevant areas that conforms with the CBC curriculum. For example, we have very few teachers who have upgraded their certificates to degree level covering the sciences. Many of them are basically maybe languages and the arts. And this one here was not going to even help solve the crisis that we have. We needed to have done that audit. In fact, one major failure that the Teacher Service Commission has failed over the years is that they allow teachers to undertake programs Now, when they bring the papers, which in other fields, when you bring a new paper, you'll get promotion. Then it is not recognized. Because if you get somebody with a degree and you are now employing that person in the teaching, you are upgrading that person, it is as if you are employing another primary school teacher. That is what they have been running away from. But I think, which of course, it is our weakness, and I think we are going to address that one very seriously. On the issue that you have asked about the public universities and the rising cost of education, I don't think we have got any option. If the government cannot pay for university education, and education is so important because university is where we can conduct research, then we cannot have buildings there without anything happening. They must be made active. For the idea that universities must be funded properly, just like primary schools, like secondary schools. If that funding is not coming from somewhere, then somebody must pay for it. Education itself is not a cheap endeavor. That is the fact. Yeah. But let me just also shock you that even as at now, our public universities are the largest private universities we have. In fact, even Nairobi University, before 2017, had it was the largest private university so far. Because parallel degree programs was generating a lot of funds to make the university run, even when the government did not give. Yeah. So I think that is what in the mind of the university community, that they want this space to be expanded. But you can see that it is making education, which is a public good, to be something which is now for the highest bidder. The person who can pay is the person who can get it. Okay. We must have a conversation, and in fact, Mheshimiwa, this is something which disturbs me. Currently, Parliament is where money is allocated. The President does not have the money. Money is with the Parliament. Let Parliament give allocation for education. Education is the most important institution, but the one which has been left with nobody to source for funds. Look at the roads in Kenya. It has got 4 institutions. We have got Kura, Kera, we have even the Roads Board. All these are working to get money to construct roads. Why don't we even have one saga also, which is dealing with the construction and raising funds for education in this country? We are only open to well-wishers who, in fact, that is the reason for which we have also engaged ourselves in changing our curriculum. Because if somebody realizes that you people are now taking off, then they come and fix you. They are the ones who say that you should not now go. With me, I'm in the old system. Okay. I was one of the first teachers who were trained to teach in the 844. But you know, 844 was firstly implemented than even this CBC. There was lack of preparation. In fact, the person who came with the idea of 844 did not even come with the idea to start another system in secondary education or primary. Okay. It was Professor McKay who had come to help Kenya establish a second university, which was also supposed to be technology-based. And that's how Moi University was created. But the side talks brought in the 844. Okay. That for us to get people go to university, stop this madness of A-levels so that we can have so many people who are passed at O-level to go to university. It has served us. For Kenyan, I know you are very competent, because if you were substandard, we could not have allowed you to interview us. Quite so. But one thing is, we were okay. We were supposed to be fixing where we were supposed to fix, without even changing as the structure. Are you getting the point? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Gentlemen, we're pressed of time, so perhaps encompass your thoughts in this final comment. Senator, I'll start with you before crossing over to Manyasi.
Okay, good. You know, actually it is true. I didn't know how 844 started, but they wanted to expand the universities, because I was the third last, because I cleared A-level 87. And when I was in Form 3, I think the last group of our
levels
came to Form 1 and they became monos 2 years. When I was in Form 4, 85, they were in Form 2 and they were not Form 1s. Because it was just like a cut immediately. And then the universities, now we have so many universities. So what I wanted to say is the universities actually requires funding. They require funding. And if you go to the rest of the world, it's like 2% of the country's budget is set aside for research. It is very sad that all our public universities, there is no money that is allocated for research. So if there is no money for research, where do we go?
All right.
That is why we are saying we need, as National Assembly and also Senate, we need a conversation so that we can give them resources. But what is very important is that second module that the universities had. Before we had issues of those who are getting C+ and above became a problem, our universities were very comfortable because every university, in fact, there was a lot of mushrooming of campuses across the country fighting for module 2.
All right.
Yeah, because that is where they were getting the resources.
Okay.
But since now we have numbers, and also those numbers soon anyway, with this new system, we also don't know where we are going.
Okay.
So
allow me to cut you short right there. We are pressed of time.
We are pressed of time.
He equally needs to have his final comment. Manyasi, kindly brief.
They need money. We need money for the university.
Simple. And you're in the legislative.
Yes, we will do something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we also need to be a bit innovative when we think about the education sector. Even as we talk about physical infrastructure and more resources, I think it's important, and I think it's good Mheshimiwa has mentioned, the issue of research. PhDs are supposed to be creating knowledge. That's what it's supposed to be. But in our universities, I don't want to mention names, we have professors who are actually doing nothing. And the politics of the day has also affected how universities are run, where when a vice chancellor changes, they throw out everybody who was in office and replace them. And you have professors who appear in class once every 2 months. You are supervising 2 students, and that's a professor that we have invested in. So even the resources that we have, I keep looking at the resources that we have, we've not utilized them enough to make sure that we do not need additional resources until we have proper management of the current resources. So I think another thing, I know Mwalimu will be up in arms, but I think we also need to think about blending. If you're a teacher, can we blend that with industry as well? So that we are not only having one highway that the teacher is ultimately to manage the education sector. I think we also need to think outside the box.
All right. Gentlemen, allow us to finish on that particular note. Akelo Misori, thank you so much for your time. It was intriguing, even as we took a look at the education matters. Alex Manyasi, governance expert, asante sana for your time.
Thank you.
Senator William Kisang, thank you for your time, and looking forward to hosting you gentlemen again. Thank you. You've watched Morning Prime. I hope you're adequately informed about the latest news making headlines, what you can expect in